Joanne Dunham was 15 years old when her life was violently taken on a June morning in 1968. She was a teenager living in Charlestown, New Hampshire, in a modest trailer park. On the morning of June 11th, she left her home on foot to catch her school bus. She never made it. Her body was discovered the next day, dumped along a remote trail 5 miles away in the neighboring town of Unity. She had been tied up, gagged, and murdered. The case quickly went cold. Now, 57 years later, the New Hampshire Attorney General's office has reopened the case. Investigators hope that new evidence and new interviews might finally uncover the truth about what happened to Joanne Dunham in the final moments of her life. This is a story of a quiet girl who disappeared on her way to school. It's the story of a case that haunted a small New England community, and of law enforcement's renewed effort to solve a crime that has remained unsolved for over half a century. Joanne Dunham was born in 1952. She lived with her family in Charlestown, a small town on the western edge of New Hampshire, near the Vermont border. In 1968, Charlestown was a rural community with just a few thousand residents. Most people knew one another, and crime was rare. Joanne lived with her parents and siblings at Rach's Mobile Home Park, a trailer park nestled along River Road. Her family was working class. Her father was employed locally, and her mother stayed home to raise the children. Joanne was a sophomore in high school. She had a reputation for being well-behaved and quiet. Teachers remembered her as attentive. Classmates said she was shy but kind. She had short dark hair, wore thick-framed glasses, and had a soft voice. She enjoyed music, reading, and writing in a notebook she often carried with her. She had plans to go to college. She talked about becoming a nurse. In the final week of school, she was excited about the summer ahead. On the morning of June 11th, Joanne followed her usual routine. She got dressed, packed her school bag, and left her home just after 7 a.m. She had a short walk from her mobile home to the school bus stop. That morning, she never arrived. When her classmates boarded the bus, Joanne wasn't there. No one thought much of it at first. It wasn't entirely unusual for a teenager to miss the bus or skip school during the final week of the term. But when she didn't return home that afternoon, her parents became worried. By evening, they were calling friends, neighbors, and the school. No one had seen her. At 10:30 p.m., the Dunham family contacted the police. Charlestown officers responded, and by midnight, a missing persons report was filed. The following morning, a formal search began. Volunteers combed the surrounding neighborhoods, riverbanks, and wooded areas near River Road. The town's fire department, state police, and even members of the National Guard were involved. It didn't take long to discover what had happened. Shortly after noon on June 12th, Joanne's body was found. It was located off Quaker City Road, in the town of Unity, just over 5 miles from where she was last seen. She had been dragged off a secluded dirt road, down a logging trail, and into the woods. Her body was hidden in thick brush. Her hands were bound behind her back with twine. Masking tape was wrapped tightly around her mouth and jaw. Her schoolbooks were found discarded nearby. The scene shocked even seasoned investigators. Joanne's clothing was intact. There was no obvious sign of sexual assault, but the medical examiner noted signs of a struggle. Her wrists showed deep ligature marks. There was bruising along her arms and shoulders. Her cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation. The conclusion was clear. Someone had abducted her, restrained her, gagged her, and left her to suffocate. Investigators immediately began canvassing the area. Quaker City Road was a lightly traveled backroad in 1968. It led to little more than forest trails and abandoned farms. To access the location where Joanne was found required local knowledge. This wasn't the type of place a stranger would stumble across. It was remote. Whoever left her there knew where they were going. In the weeks that followed, police questioned dozens of residents. They re-interviewed Joanne's classmates. They searched vehicles. They even conducted door-to-door inquiries in both Charlestown and Unity. At one point, 3 persons of interest were identified. However, the evidence was circumstantial. There was no confession, no eyewitness, and no physical proof connecting any individual to the crime. The case stalled. Leads dried up. Time passed. Joanne's murder faded from the headlines. By the early 1970s, the case had gone cold. Joanne Dunham's family moved away, some to Massachusetts, others to different parts of New Hampshire. Over time, her story became local folklore, a cautionary tale about a girl who vanished on her way to school. Her grave, located in St. Mary's Cemetery in Claremont, was marked with a simple stone that listed only her name and birth and death year. No one ever added an epitaph. It was as if the town didn't know what to say. In the years that followed, The case would be revisited sporadically. Each time a new detective was assigned to the cold case unit, Joanne's file would be pulled, reviewed, and re-examined. But there was no breakthrough. The evidence had degraded. The original crime scene had been poorly preserved. A common issue in the 1960s. Interviews had been lost, documents misplaced, memories faded, suspects died. Then, in 2025, something changed. On the 57th anniversary of Joanne's disappearance, the New Hampshire Attorney General's office made a public announcement. The cold case unit, working with the state police's major crime division, was reopening the case. According to officials, new leads had emerged. Although they declined to specify what those leads were, they made clear that this was not a symbolic gesture. They were actively investigating. The announcement was made at St. Mary's Cemetery, where a new headstone had just been installed for Joanne. The new marker was donated by the lead investigator, Todd Flanagan. It included her full name, birth and death dates, and for the first time, an inscription, "Forever Loved." Flanagan spoke briefly at the press conference, telling reporters that cold cases aren't just files. He said, "These cases are commitments of the heart. We owe it to the victims. We owe it to their families. And we owe it to the truth." Investigators have declined to comment on the forensic details. It is unclear whether DNA was recovered from the scene. Some reports suggest that evidence such as the twine or the masking tape may have been preserved and re-examined using modern techniques. Forensic genealogy, which has been used in recent years to solve decades-old crimes, may also be playing a role. One theory that has emerged in recent years is that Joanne's murder may have been the work of a serial offender. The Connecticut River Valley Killer, an unidentified suspect believed to have murdered at least 7 women across Vermont and New Hampshire in the 1970s and 80s, operated in a similar region. The timeline doesn't quite match. Joanne's death occurred a full decade earlier, but investigators have not ruled out the possibility that her killer was responsible for other attacks. Another theory suggests that Joanne may have known her attacker. There was no sign of a forced abduction. It is possible she accepted a ride from someone she trusted. That person may have driven her away from town, attempted to assault her, and then panicked when she resisted. The location where her body was found suggests planning, or at the very least, familiarity with the area. In cold cases, time is the enemy. Witnesses die. Evidence, memories grow unreliable. But time can also bring unexpected gifts. People who once stayed silent may finally come forward. Technology advances. Cases once thought unsolvable are solved every year using methods that didn't exist a decade ago. The New Hampshire Cold Case Unit is encouraging anyone with information, even the smallest detail, to come forward. A neighbor who saw a vehicle near the woods, a student who remembers a suspicious classmate, a family member who overheard something strange. These cases are often solved by tips that seem trivial at first glance. And someone out there knows the ending. If you have any information about the murder of Joanne Dunham, please contact the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit. Your tip could finally bring a killer to justice. Thank you for watching Fatal Secrets of True Crime. If you found this case compelling, be sure to subscribe for more deep dive investigations into the forgotten crimes that still cry out for answers. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, the truth is never buried forever.